basically what's going on. So I thought I could maybe help you guys navigate through getting started on homeschooling and how to kind of get started in that process. So, and I'm also going to, hereafter I'll make some videos on different curriculums that I've used, and I will also get some other parents that I know that homeschool, and they're going to just kind of show their homeschool curriculum that they use and how it works for their family. That way you can kind of see the different choices of curriculums that are out there. And they can also, you know, just some advice that they have. So, and it's really hard to know where to begin. There's so much out there. There's so many curriculums to choose from. So through this whole process, I want you to think of the word freedom, because we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But I want you to think of the word freedom, because a lot of we're thinking about, you know, is the traditional schooling, like how it looks in a classroom, or, you know, are we going to do the, I know a lot of schools are doing distant learning. And so I just want you to remember that word freedom. So let's go to the first step. The first step is to figure out what your homeschool laws are. Each state has different homeschool laws. You can find that at hslda.org. So that stands for Homeschool Legal Defense. And you can click on your state. Alan? Sorry, I got my kids here. You can click on your state and see the different laws that are required for your state. South Dakota is quite easy. You get a form. You can actually get it right from hslda.org and fill it out. And you can either get it notarized by a notary, or you can get a copy of your child's birth certificate and take it to the school. I choose to do the notarizing because I just don't want them to have a copy of my kids' of their birth certificate. So I should tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Rachel Anderberg. I have 5 kids, 4 that are homeschool age or school age, and this will be, I'll be going into my 7th year of homeschooling. So I'm not an expert, but we've been successful at homeschooling for that long. And, you know, I'm just kind of through trial and error have learned what works for us, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. But it was something I didn't think I would enjoy. I didn't think that I would want to stick to it, or I even actually started to try to get a Christian school started in our area. But then the further I got into getting that started, I thought I wouldn't even send my kids. I have come to enjoy homeschooling. I've enjoyed the freedom of homeschooling. So with that, that's kind of my introduction. So the first step, go to hslda.org to learn your laws. And second step is I would really recommend becoming a member of hslda.org. The reason being, it's like $12 a month. You know, that's a couple cups of coffee. It's it will have your back as far as legal defense team. It will it just covers a lot of areas that if you need legal help, it will have your back. So, and I'm not going to, you know, I almost think that there will be a lot of pushback on homeschooling because schools will lose state funding for every child that's homeschooled. So we might start to see a pushback on that. So I think it'd be really wise to join that. Step 3 is to fill out your why. So why you want to homeschool. Now, my advice to you is where you apply your word freedom. And my advice to you is don't put, because they're going to make my child wear a mask in school, or they're going to make my child social distance. That's a negative why to me. You know, you could do, your why could be something like, because I want to preserve our constitutional freedoms that we have in the United States, and I want to teach my kids about our freedoms that we have as Americans, or, you know, it can be anything like that to turn it into a positive where you kind of want your main focus to be. Really, in homeschooling, the sky's the limit, and you get to have the freedom of why you want it to be the way it is. So my why, I'll give you an example of my why. Mine's a little bit different. See if I can find it here. My papers are out of order. I was running back and forth. So this is my why. I want to give my kids an education based on the foundation of God and the biblical principles and values while providing them with the needed skills that aren't learned behind a desk. They have to have the freedom to navigate through what we feel is right for our family and to keep strong Christian family at the core of our home. So that is my why of why I homeschool. And so my curriculum might look something different than another person's because of my why. So since my foundation is going to be in God's word, then I'm going to pick a Christian curriculum that we can learn that. So, and that will be probably my main focus throughout our teaching is why. So that's kind of that. So you can, there's actually, and I'll link it, where you can actually fill out different whys and kind of go through the processes of starting to homeschool and how you want that to look. So step 4 is, what is your child's learning preference? There is different preferences. The most common is a combination called VAK, V-A-K. So that'd be your visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And then another one that's really popular is VARK, which just adds your reading and writing, visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetics. There are actually 7 that you can kind of choose from, and you can combine them. Visual, does your child prefer pictures and images? Does it like solitary? Does it like to be alone? Does it do better on its own? Auditory, if it likes music and sounds, if it can really work well with that. I have one child that's like that. Social. And this is where it gets kind of tricky with homeschooling, unless if you have more than one kid. Do they like working in groups? Which most kids are social and they like that. So, there's other ways that you can find socializing for them. Those might be, just different groups to get into. You can also find different homeschool groups in your area or even set one up where even if it's not even constructed or anything, you just go to the gym and go play or do whatever just to keep your kids around other kids if you want to. And then there is, let's see, where's that? Verbal, prefers using words both in speech and writing. Physical, which is kinesthetic. If your child prefers using their hands and touch, a lot of experiments, if that's the kind where they learn best. And then logical, which would be mathematics, they prefer using logical reasoning in their systems. So those are kind of the different types of learning styles that each kid has. And there's different ways you can incorporate that in. So, and then there's also 5 teaching styles or approaches and methods. So I'm not going to get into much detail about them. Traditional would be what you see mostly in the public schools or the private schools. They use graded textbooks, workbooks. They cover subjects usually in a period of 180 days. They have manuals and tests. So that's kind of the traditional side. I mean, what most of us are used to. And then there is the online corresponding instruction, which would be kind of what if your kids were pulled out during public school, that's what they did. Where they're instructed online. And that's how they're taught. I have done an online course with my kids. We did it for 2 months, I think is what we did. And I absolutely hated it. But that's my opinion. And that was my kids' opinion, because it seemed like it was too much screen time, that they had to be in front of a computer, and it wasn't where they were actually doing stuff with their hands. So, and I'm not a person that likes that. I'm a person, actually, if I'm on a computer too long, I feel frustrated and unaccomplished, even though, like, if I'm doing my taxes, I've accomplished, a whole year's of taxes because I wait till the end, but I feel very unaccomplished, and so I'm very frustrated. So we tried it. It didn't work for us. I think kids need to learn to turn a book. I think they need to be able to build projects and read out of a book and do work on a paper, handwriting. We do cursive writing. So, but if that's going to work, if you have a job that where you can't be home with your kids, that might be the best way to go. But there's different ideas, and I'll get into the different types of homeschool curriculums you can buy too. And there's a classical. This focuses on passing down the elements of Christian culture.
Claire took my sweatshirt.
Okay, remember I'm doing a live. Presley. Sorry, interruptions. If you guys have any questions too, don't be afraid to ask any questions during this. I would be glad to answer them. So they teach the children the core knowledge and the skills based on natural development. 3 stages of learning in classical education is grammar, logic, and dialect, and the rhetoric. So that's kind of the classical type approach. Then there's the Charlotte Mason, and this is what we mostly use. We use a lot of to digest things naturally. Good habits. We use good habits to lead to good characters. We have books that are like the living books. That would be the classical books type that we read. It's really a study into nature and music, and it goes. We are pretty chronological, and that's kind of like a classical. So I would say it's more of a mix where we start at the beginning of time and go to, to modern American history and modern world history. So it's just they don't require, there's no test really. I do a lot of the reading. Once they get older, there's more independent work for them to do. So far we've been liking that. Then there's the unschooling approach, which kind of sounds like you just let them do whatever, but it's not. It's self-driven by what the child wants to learn. What is interested in this school? What do they want to learn about? And you just kind of give them that, let them have that lead. And in all schooling and homeschooling, your goal should be for them to have a love for learning. So, they just have, it's a books with unschooling. There's just all kinds of different things you can do with unschooling, and there's a bunch of different sites you can go to learn about how to unschool. Unit studies and all-in-one programs. So this is kind of the program that I use too, is kind of an all-in-one program, but this year we might be switching to more of a unit study where all my kids will be learning about one subject for a month at a time, and it will incorporate their language arts, their social studies, history, science, and Bible all into one subject. Like it might be the earth. So that will be a month of that, studying the earth and incorporating everything in.
Roughly.
So I've kind of been looking at that, and we'll go over that when I get into different type of curriculums. And then you have the ELETIC that is kind of a combination of them all. So this is where you would kind of throw your own thing together. You might do some online schooling with them with some subjects. You might do, some unschooling with them. It's just kind of a different collaboration. And this I wouldn't recommend for a first-time homeschooler, just because it's a lot to take in.
I'm gonna try you.
But it would be something probably maybe further on down the road. So that is kind of just the different types of, and I will post some links in this afterwards too, where you can kind of get this. Step 6 is narrowing down curriculums. So this is where it can get really overwhelming because there is so many curriculums to choose from, and how do you know which one's best? And it's, that looks like a lot of money. Are we even going to like it? Is it going to work? And so here's kind of how I narrow it down. So you have basically 2 different types of curriculums. You can do Christian or secular. So then you choose if you want Christian or secular. And then that will narrow down a lot of it. So then you decide if you want online, not online, or a mix. And it depends on the age of the kids too, and if you're home or not. I would say the pros of them, the pros of agglomeration, like to get, you could, if you wanted to do a mix, would be that it would free up some time for different, maybe like if you have more than one kid, you have one kid that's in kindergarten. If you had, let's say you wanted your kid to do an online language arts class or online math class. So during that time, you could take your kindergartner and teach them. So it kind of free up some time where you could get, other kids done. I would say for a pro on one thing would be an all-in-one box curriculum. That means you get everything you need, usually except for like maybe math and sometimes language arts, just because that is different age levels. And sometimes with the all-in-one curriculums, it will work better for a group of kids. So if you have more than one kid, you can teach them all of that. Step 7, after you finally get, get what kind of curriculum you want to use. And you can, a lot of times they'll send you samples too. You're going to order your curriculum, order your supplies. I would say don't go overboard and buy a different bunch of manipulatives. Like in math, you're going to think, oh, I need this and this and this. And the math that we use, we have one set of manipulatives that we use. At the beginning of this, I think I bought everything that you can imagine to buy, games and all this, and we really haven't used them. So I wouldn't go overboard on that. My must-haves for me is a marker board. And for not all homeschool, you won't need them. But for my English program that I use, a marker board is kind of a must. Let's see. I color code everything. So you figure out if you have more than one kid, I would recommend color coding. That means their colored pencils. I put fingernail polish on the top of their colored pencils.
Wait, what? Why do you have these on the program?
I don't know. Okay, leave that here. I need it. Go help her find his jeans because I'm doing a live right now. You need to go, please. Thank you. Sorry, kids are. But I color code everything. So one kid is orange, so his binder is orange. His file folders are orange. All of his colored pencils have orange at the top. His pens and pencils have orange on them with fingernail polish. That way, it's easier to keep track of it. He's responsible for his own stuff, and then they're not fighting over who lost what or whatever. So, a good printer. So I have a Canon all-in-one printer that does copying, and it's a laser printer instead of a ink cartridge printer, inkjet. So, but I print a lot of stuff off. Sometimes depends on what kind of curriculum you need, then you might not need one. A good teacher planner, and there's about a bazillion out there on those too. And then a laminator. I use my laminator a lot, and I'll show you what I have for a laminator. It's called the Creative Station. So I can just laminate on both sides. I can laminate, like this is laminated with a magnetic back. You buy different cartridges for it, and it's worked really well for me as far as my laminating goes. And then a cart, which I was originally going to do this downstairs where my school area is at, but for some reason the internet wasn't working. And so I have like a cart that has wheels on it. Especially if you don't have a designated area, I would really recommend a cart because you can put all the books in there. And then when school's over, If you're doing it at your kitchen table, you can wheel it away or just keep things organized and at bay. 3-hole punch stapler. I do a bookbinder because of how I set up how I organize things. And this is just what my bookbinder looks like. So it uses a 3-ring binding, and I will do a video on how I organized 4 kids' schoolwork for the year. Red pins for, of course, grading. This will be your best friend. A timer. My kid said it too. A timer's good to have to kids that like to procrastinate. And then what else was I gonna have on there? That's it. And then I have, and then usually with your curriculum, it'll kind of give you a supply list of what you need, just like when they go to public school. You get a supply list and caffeine and special treats just for the teacher. And I say that it is, it's a different, especially for your kids that would come out of a public school setting and then you're teaching it. I'm sure many of you experienced it this year, that it's a learning curve for both. It's learning curve for the teachers to, sorry, I got my kid.
Oh, yeah.
He's changing his clothes again. It is a learning curve for the kids. Your kids are more comfortable around you, and so you're going to get some more sass, and you're going to get some more, it's going to take some adjusting for them to learn to respect you and to do what you want them to do.
Yep.
It's just so, just to give you, stick with it and try to, give incentives for your kids. Like my kids know that if they're done with school and their chores by a certain time, they're free. They're free for the day, and they absolutely love that they don't have, they're done at noon, and they know that the public school kids are still in school for another 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And they absolutely love that idea. And so, and there's days, it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's all wonderful and glorious. And there's days that I'm just like, why did I do this? But then when you start seeing fruits and you start seeing different things, the freedom that you have, I mean, my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old have a job that they're able to go to if they have their schoolwork done. I mean, what a great learning experience to actually have a job. They both have checking accounts, so they get to learn real world stuff, how to balance a checkbook, how to be responsible with money. That's something you don't learn behind a school desk. They get to, if we want to go somewhere, we get to go somewhere. Sometimes I take the school with us. Sometimes we just say, we're not going to do it. So it leaves a lot of freedom where you don't have to be there at a certain time, pick up your kids, drop your kids off, or however that may be. There's a lot of freedom in it. And if you, it's just what counts as a school day, like let's say that you're deciding you want to go to do something exciting for the day, that still can count as a school day. I mean, it's still learning still happens if you're not behind a desk. So just, I just encourage you to just think of the freedoms that you can have, and it takes some time to get everybody adjusted. Step 8 would to be, as soon as you get all your stuff, to start prepping. I like to prep early. That way, when it's time for school to start, I don't have to sit there and cut things out before, we start on a subject, or it's just easier to do that. I kind of go through the curriculum and see what I need to print off, or, what different things we're doing. The science, I always buy the kit for their experiments. That way I don't have to find toilet paper rolls or plastic plates or whatever. They have everything I need in a box and they send it to me. So, and I And I will kind of, like when I'm planning and prepping, I'm going to go through that in a video too, like how I actually get ready for our school year. But guys, feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions, you can share this video with your friends to just kind of see, if this, if they just need help navigating through it. So thanks for watching.